All right. Good morning, everyone. Um, Welcome to our 2024 first Q1 quarter Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Committee meeting. Anthony Barrett, I um, support this initiative along with our chair. Our chair is Jay Williams of the Harbor Foundation. I have introduced myself, and then we'll transition into our agenda and a very impactful program that we have planned for everyone today.
Well, good morning. My name is Jay Williams. I'm the co-chair of the Governor's Workforce Council DEIA committee. Happy to see you all. We've got robust attendance. There are 37 folks coming on. Looks like a few more maybe joining us. So once again, just thank you all for the work that you have done. We've been working on this for some time. There's been valuable contributions from every one of you as committee leads, group leads, committee members, important for really ensuring that diversity, equity, inclusivity, is not an afterthought to building a strong workforce. It is integral in building a strong workforce. It is necessary. And that doesn't happen just because someone, even the governor says, well, that's important, so let it be done. It happens because you all dedicate your time, your talent, your expertise, your passion, willing to push back against things that just are part of the status quo. So thank you for that. And again, kudos to Anthony for his leadership and the staff. So I look forward to our panelists, and I'll throw it back to you, Anthony.
All right. Thank you, Jay. And I saw Wes just jump on board. So I'd love for Wes just to give himself an introduction as well.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Jay. It's an honor to be here. Again, I'm kind of new to this, but I just am so appreciative of the work that continues to happen in this space. I know this is going to be an outstanding program. So just thank you all for coming, and thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you. So as we transition, we have a jam-packed agenda. We're looking forward to a great panel discussion. But first, we'll probably hear from our subcommittee updates. A lot of the wonderful work that's being done across our subcommittees to put forth, the best kind of recommendations to remove as many barriers as possible for our vulnerable and priority populations in our state. So, with that said, Black History Month is a time to celebrate a lot of the rich contributions that's been contributed to what we call our democracy or our economy, and we are not able to accomplish a lot of those things without a large part of the contributions and innovation that's came through some of the Black ingenuity in our country and our history. So with that being said, I'd like to at least transition over to our Genevieve Walker, who chairs our BIPOC committee.
Hi, thank you, Anthony. Good morning, everyone. Appreciative of this opportunity to share the work of the BIPOC subcommittee. We have spent the last few months working on what I think is a very robust survey that will be administered to BIPOC job seekers. Again, our intent is really to gather some specific data that can be shared with employers around the state regarding what some of the specific needs are to the BIPOC population and ensure that we're able to communicate what some of those needs are. We're also looking to be able to create something of a blue ribbon for employers that are working towards meeting some of these BIPOC needs in terms of their strides towards meeting diversity, equity, inclusion goals. So we're working toward that, and the survey will be one of the first steps toward achieving that larger end goal. Thank you, Anthony.
All right, thanks, Genevieve. Next slide. Next, I'd like to invite Earl Bloodworth, who also chairs our reentry subcommittee, and wonderful work that they're doing.
Anthony, it's Mark Seutzer here. I think I'm going to cover that for Earl.
All right, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we're progressing with the employer toolkit, and it's really turned into more of a collaboration with larger groups that we're bringing in to form a coalition. Hopefully to have the toolkit be just one of the items that will be part of the overall effort bringing together employers, the various industry groups, a lot of the larger trade associations, and then having the toolkit be a landing place as a directory as well for linking employers with the various community groups that are providing services in the reentry area. We've got a final draft on the toolkit now. We're working on production with the great help from Steve Cox over at Central Connecticut State University and Heidi Hughes, a management professor there, and Dave McCluskey from Department of Corrections. And we're working with CRI, Career Resources, as well, to coordinate some of the networks that they've got in their area of expertise. So we're targeting sometime later this year for rolling it out and starting with some employer orientation presentations, and then training sessions in more depth as employers want to see the need for that. So it's definitely moving along very robustly, and hoping to have a lot of the organizations jump on board as well. So we start to provide some collaboration and coordination.
All right, thank you, Mark. And I know it's been a long time coming for this process for us to get to this stage to be able to engage our returning citizen and make sure that they have, some inclusive and equitable opportunities in our workforce. So, but thank you for all your hard work, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Next, we'll have an update from Alan Gunsberg, who chairs our Person with Disability Subcommittee.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here. We had a slow fourth quarter last year. We didn't meet as often as we would have liked to have. However, we have completed a tour, and we have a report of our tour of all of the American Job Centers. What we looked at was accessibility, inclusion, and making sure that signage was right, that the software was correct, and that report's available from us or from Anthony. We've also built a team to deliver windmills training, which is training for employers on how to hire people and retain people with disabilities. And finally, we're working to expand our no wrong door process. We have a fair number of individuals on the team that are working together. We probably need a couple more individuals that I've talked about with Anthony to round out the team so that we can have all the doors represented and make sure that we can deliver the proper information to the individual when the door is opened. Thank you very much for your time.
Once again, thank you, Alan, for all your steadfast commitment in supporting this work and making sure that persons with disabilities are always at the forefront of a lot of our workforce initiatives. Next, update from Mimi. How you doing, Mimi? You're muted.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Anthony. I think now we'll hear from Mimi. Just doesn't really have a lot of gravitas, does it? Anyway, it's really nice to be here to see everyone. I chair the youth subcommittee, and we have just recently had our first meeting in 2024, and we are regrouping and kind of re-envisioning. If you haven't seen all of the work around disconnected youth that's happening in this state, then you must have been abroad for a while, because there has been so much activity around disconnected youth, which is just awesome. A lot driven by the DEIA report that came out recently with the unseen crisis. And yeah, so I think that has really kind of bolstered a lot of our work, and we are excited about that. We continue to kind of shape some of the things that we wanted to do this year, kind of setting the tone for, helping to carry forward the great work that's already being done in the state that I know Gigi has been involved with, and a lot of folks on our committee. So the areas of focus for us that came out of our meeting this for 2024 is a continued emphasis on data and the need for integrated data and cross-sector data that is statewide. There's been investments in local, data systems, and we really believe that, those people that are serving young people 14 to 26 that are, you know, uh, in some capacity that are disconnected youth or at high risk of being disconnected, that there needs to be a statewide system. I keep asking the questions, do we know who our disconnected youth are? And we know more than we did before because of some of the work that has been happening in the state, but we still don't really have, we're not to the point where we have a by name list and we can really, young person by young person know what, how they're doing. And the other thing is, how do we know we're making a difference in terms of driving down those numbers and the success rate? And those are two questions that I will continue to ask. And I think that, our committee has focused on. So data is one of the first things that we talked about, trying to support the work that's going on, and a proposal just recently by Jeff Curry. But also the other topic areas that I think we're really interested in moving forward with more is linking more explicitly with employers. And I know that, the BIPOC committee and the reentry committee have both been working on employer engagement. And I'm just going to put this out to the group that, would there be some value in bringing employers together to do some of the trainings that would come out of this committee, to just, draw attention to some best practices around those different populations. I think that one of the things that we're missing in our committee is really that strong linkage with employers. And so we've reached out to CBIA. I don't know if anybody from CBIA is on here, hoping to hear back. We just reached out, but other employers as well. It seems like if we can, do consistent training and kind of put our populations in front of employers, that would be certainly of value to both the people that we're trying to serve and our employers. So just putting that out to the group. The other things that we're going to focus on is really youth leadership and youth decision making, and supporting some of the efforts that are happening now in the state, but really creating some youth leadership pathways. Schools and community-based organizations, partnerships, and trying to forge better relationships there. I recently was honored to go to a White House event with Secretary Cardona. This is something that I know is on the minds of people on the federal level as well, is what is that connection between our school systems and kind of the early warning indicators, and being able to do some preventative work, and then have our community-based organizations assist before young people drop out. So two other areas that we're really focused on this year is going to be some of the juvenile justice work. Tasha Hunt, I don't know if she's on here today, but talking about some of the partnerships that are forming there, and really focused on, what specifically do we need to look at for subpopulations of youth, and what are those pathways. The last area is really, and I'm doing this, so I'm executive director of the National Youth Employment Coalition. I probably should have also mentioned that. But one of the things that we're doing with my organization is also creating a tool to look for federal funds and where those are and who to contact. And so did a little research and, have put this out there for, really how are we connecting with the infrastructure dollars, dollars out of the Department of Transportation and Department of Commerce and Department of Energy. I've met recently with all of those federal agencies and have, really been advocating for very clear carve outs for young people and attention to, in particular, disconnected youth. So stay tuned for that. We have our big event next week. I know some of you will be there. That will be with Acting Secretary Sue of Labor, and a lot of folks from Connecticut will be down in Atlanta next week with us. So looking forward to seeing folks down there too.
All right, thank you, Mimi. I always appreciate your commitment and a lot of the work that you're doing, not just in our state, but on the national level. Thank you. Next and not least is our Veterans Committee chaired by Lewis and Robert Sharp.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Good morning. I'll try and keep this brief. I know we've got an action-packed agenda. Thanks for all the speakers for coming. So excited to announce that our focus this year was to rebuild the team. I think nothing happens without a strong team. So we have a renewed commitment from all our participants, and we've updated the team to include support from not-for-profits, the Department of VA, Department of Labor, and some very passionate vets about hiring and retaining vets in the state. The other thing we've been working on is informing policymakers to make the state more attractive for vets. That's one of the largest barriers when vets transition. They look for states that provide them the most benefit. So the thing that we're steaming ahead this year with is hopefully to identify ways to provide some property tax exemption for disabled veterans. Additionally, we've developed a working strategy with a problem set and an action plan. I'd like to circulate this with the other subcommittee chairs and see if there's any synergies. So I don't expect anything on the issues that are specific to vets, like the property tax exemption for disabled vets or GI Bill possibilities, but transportation is something we've identified as an issue, and I'm sure that the other subcommittees are feeling the burden there. So hopefully I'll share the working strategy and the action plan with the other chairs, and would welcome any feedback or ways that we could partner together to identify solutions. And then as Mimi was speaking and Alan was speaking, I think there's additional synergies that the subcommittees can find. For veterans, they could obviously be 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, so they'll fill the youth category. Alan, with your committee, disabled veterans, unfortunately, it's a harsh reality. So I think that in addition, I'd like to this year spend more time cross-functionally across the subcommittees to try to find synergies. And the first way that I'll try to commit to doing that is Mimi talked about CBIA. My manager, Matt McSpadden, is the former chair of CBIA. I'm also very close with Christy Bentima. So I'll look to set up something for the chairs and CBIA to start talking, but we need to really focus on the end state, which is employment, and the only way we're going to achieve that is employers. So very excited about this year and looking forward to working with everyone.
All right, once again, thank you, Louis. Definitely appreciate your commitment and your vision to move our veterans forward. Next, this gentleman needs probably no introduction, probably one of the best marketers out here, doing a lot of great work, engaging our manufacturers, our employers, and making sure that we're driving diverse talent into the manufacturing industry. So without any ado, I'd like to turn it over to Paul Lavoie, our Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer.
Well, thank you, Anthony, and good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. So Paul Lavoie, Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share with you a little bit about the manufacturing sector in the state of Connecticut, and then talk to you a little bit about what makes Connecticut unique as it relates to the manufacturing sector, and then what we're doing from the Office of Manufacturing to make sure that we have the skilled workforce that we need to meet the demands of the manufacturing community. And I'm just so pleased with how much what this group is doing aligns with what we're doing in the Office of Manufacturing. And I'm looking forward to continue to work together with all of you to be able to provide tremendous opportunities for people in the manufacturing sector. I look at my role as being the connector around the industry engagement. How do I get manufacturers engaged in taking a look at making sure that they're expanding the full capabilities to the full capabilities of the people that are available to be able to fill our jobs? So it really is to get them to expand their thinking and to help them. So a little bit about Connecticut's manufacturing ecosystem. We are the second largest sector in the state of Connecticut, second to finance and insurance. And we are very close to becoming the first. We're going to see some significant GDP growth. Contrary to what you might read in the press, the manufacturing sector in Connecticut is alive and growing. We've grown at 5.2% in 2022 and at 6.7% in 2023. And in 2022, that growth helped make Connecticut the 7th fastest growing economy in the United States. We're number 1 in aircraft engine and airplane parts manufacturing. We're number 2 in shipbuilding. We are number 2 in defense spending on a per capita basis, next to Virginia. And when it comes to raw dollar defense spending, we rank number 7. So we're up there with California, Texas, Florida, Virginia, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, all from being raw dollars in defense spending coming from the defense industry. The medical device industry is growing significantly here in the state of Connecticut. And then we have some really fun things. The world's largest organic snack factory is in Connecticut, and the world's largest non-alcoholic brewing facility is in Connecticut as well. So, you know, we're not just all defense, and we're not just all submarines, helicopters, and jet engines. We do have a burgeoning food industry and medical device industry, as well as an incredibly diverse manufacturing ecosystem here in the state of Connecticut. We have one of the most talented workforces in the country. We have companies there are 177 companies that are currently looking to establish operations here in Connecticut. And that really is all designed around the workforce that we can provide for manufacturing leaders. Connecticut has a distinct advantage in manufacturing over any other state. And we have 3 things that are unique. The first thing is that we are the first state, and we are one of 6 to have a bipartisan manufacturing caucus. This was created in 2012, where both sides of the aisle came together to say manufacturing is critically important to the economy of the state of Connecticut. It provides people across the state of Connecticut with life-changing careers, and we need to make sure that the entire legislation is focused on supporting and growing the manufacturing sector. In 2015, this manufacturing caucus and the Commerce Committee created the Manufacturing Innovation Fund. This is a reoccurring fund that is in the budget, and it's bonded, and it's money that we use to invest in the manufacturing sector, whether there are grant programs or other programs that are all designed around helping to grow the manufacturing sector here in the state. Since 2015, we've invested $130 million in the manufacturing sector, mostly designed at manufacturers of 300 employees or less. In fact, all except one of our programs is for manufacturers 300 employees or less. The third thing that we have is we're the only state with my role. We're the only state with a chief manufacturing officer. I'm appointed by the governor, and I'm housed in the Department of Economic and Community Development. I have the full resources of the state of Connecticut available to be able to serve the manufacturing sector. I have really 2 goals in manufacturing. Connecticut has a manufacturing strategic plan. It was released in February of 2023, and it was updated in October of 2023. So we do a 6-month update to the plan. There's 2 major goals. One is to achieve full employment in the manufacturing sector by 2030. All right, my goal is to make sure that the manufacturers have the workforce that they need to meet the demands of their customers. Right now, the single biggest impediment to growth in the manufacturing sector is the lack of available and skilled workforce. And quite frankly, we need to expand our thinking as manufacturers to what's going to be available to us to be able to fill those jobs. And I'll share with you some initiatives that I'm working on in conjunction with the Office of Workforce Strategy. The second is to drive the manufacturing GDP to 20% of the state's economy. by 2030 as well. Right now, we're 13.2% of the state's economy. In 2021, we were 10%. So we continue to see significant growth in the manufacturing economy as well. So here's the plan to get to full employment really takes a lot of the work that's already being done, and it consolidates it together. But more importantly, it focuses on getting employers engaged in these solutions. We can't do anything. We can do all that we can do to provide everybody with wonderful opportunities. But if I don't have enlightened manufacturers that are willing to expand their thinking about what work can be done within their organizations, none of what we're going to doing is going to work. And as I go across the state, I run into myths about other people working in the manufacturing sector, and I run into a lot of fear. And quite frankly, fear is false expectations appearing real. So my job is to make sure that those false expectations are eliminated by allowing people to understand that there's a diverse population out there that we need to consider. So let me tell you specifically what we're focused on and what we're focused on working with our manufacturing sector. We have an initiative underway with women in manufacturing. We have a manufacturing advisory council. It's named Elevate Her, and it's all women who are working on what are the barriers for women to achieve success in manufacturing, and what can I do, or the Office of Manufacturing do, the Office of Workforce Strategy, what can everybody do to eliminate those barriers and create an environment where women can reach their full potential in the manufacturing sector. I'm working with a couple of different organizations and working with Lewis and looking forward to continue to work with Anthony around veterans. How do we integrate veterans back into the workforce? Boy, if you served in the military, what a better place to come to work for than Connecticut, where you can move your passion for protecting the country to your passion to making things that help protect our soldiers, right? We make the most sophisticated machines that we use in the military, and we can just take that passion and put it into making the equipment that helps protect our soldiers and bring them home safely. So we have a tremendous opportunity to integrate veterans into the manufacturing sector. We're working very closely with the Department of Correction and Vocation Villages around reentry. And how do we get the reentry population? And we have manufacturers who 10% of their workforce is comprised of the reentry population, and the recidivism rate is zero. No one, these jobs are providing people with the opportunities that they need. And that's where there's an area where I need to overcome myths and fears as it relates to manufacturers and what they think about that. We're working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and how do we provide them? There are many jobs in the manufacturing sector that meet well with people with disabilities, and how do I expand the industry's thinking around considering these people and what kind of jobs can they do within the manufacturing sector? We're looking at BIPOC and how we provide tremendous opportunities for people to create generational change within their families through careers in manufacturing. I've seen it. I've seen kids get jobs and be able to provide stable housing and stable food and get away housing insecurity and food insecurity for mothers, grandmothers, all kinds of folks that made sure that these kids were on the straight and narrow, and they've been provided tremendous opportunities. And then when it comes to youth, we have several initiatives around what we're doing to engage youth in STEM careers, from funding a FIRST robotics program across the state to doing career road shows where we get middle school kids and high school kids out to meet with manufacturers in a kind of a trade show setting so they can understand what careers and opportunities are available for youth, and to be able to get them to think differently about manufacturing. We need to change the hearts and minds of manufacturing. It's no longer dark, dirty, and dangerous. It is really sophisticated environments, and it's very, very, we need very talented people to be able to be successful in manufacturing. And you can go right from high school into a career in manufacturing very, very successfully. So we're looking at those areas. We're looking around, to get to full employment, I need to leverage all that's being done in workforce development. I need to leverage everything that's being done in workforce growth, which is how do we increase the labor participation rate? How do we eliminate barriers that are preventing people from getting into the workforce? But again, I need to have an accepting manufacturing ecosystem in order for all of this to work. And so my role is really has to be, how do I continue to engage with the manufacturing sector to be able to get them to consider and open their doors? And then the third lane that we're working on, which is really important from a career development perspective, is that understanding that we're never hiring our way out of the problem. There's never going to be enough people. And so we really have to look at how we can use industrial automation to get the work done where we're never going to have people to do the work. And that requires a different level of employee. And then we're providing with training and support and technology to make sure that we're developing that workforce of the future. And again, the way that I explain it is, if you want a career in the state of Connecticut, the only thing that's going to prevent you is certainly barriers that are there as well. But get out of bed, because if you get out of bed, we have programs available that are going to help you break through those barriers and to be able to make sure that you have a career in manufacturing. So those are some of the major initiatives and things that we're working on. Again, I see my role as really working on employer engagement to really get employers to expand their DEI&A thinking, to be able to say these are all work populations that will do very well in manufacturing and will succeed in manufacturing. And all of that really comes from my personal experience leading a manufacturing organization where every one of those groups that I've just talked about were working in our facility in Cromwell, Connecticut. So Anthony, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to give an update on what's happening in manufacturing in Connecticut and what our role is in making sure that we're providing equity and opportunity for everyone here in the state. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Always appreciate your contribution to this work. All right, we'll do a quick little introduction. From winning in school singing contests to winning contests at the world's famous Apollo Theater, he went from singing in his driveway in Windsor, Connecticut, to signing a major record deal in New York City. Sometime later, he became the executive director at a major music company. He placed music for Jay-Z, Beyonce, 50 Cent, Jennifer Lopez, and others. Later, he would author 2 books and looking to write more. Started the June Archer School of Arts and the June Archer Foundation, hosts TV shows, interviewed some of today's top celebrities in the world, and currently sits on the board of the Harper Symphony Orchestra and the Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center, and speaks around the country. June is currently the creator and host of The Winner's Circle on 50 Cent's This Is 50 platform. As I transition, inspirational television, media host, entrepreneur, music executive, author, influencer, philanthropist, June Archer has been sharpening the craft in the entertainment industry for over 20 plus years. Let's welcome June Archer as our Black History Month celebration keynote.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm super excited. Anthony, thank you. Jay, thank you. The last speaker, he and I have to speak because we are speaking the same language when it comes to workforce development and what we're trying to create in the state. I want to also add, Brother Barrett, that I'm also on the board of directors for the Greater Hartford Arts Council. So I want to thank Dr. Reverend Shelley Best for allowing me the opportunity. I'll tell you why it's important. I grew up in a time where I lived in the insurance capital of the world. I hate to say it, we are no longer the insurance capital of the world. We have to be known for something else. And that something else to me is art and culture. In 1989, I graduated from Windsor High School in the pursuit of wanting to be Michael Jackson or New Edition. And I set forth, starting my career going to Central Connecticut State University, studying communications, mass media, but also starting in Cigna Insurance Company in Bloomfield. I share that because my guidance counselor failed to give me the combinations to be successful. As Paul said, we have to start grooming our young people for what we see 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. And when she failed to give me those combinations, it wasn't until I went to Central that the recruiter said, what are you interested in besides wanting to do sports? And I had just turned down a soccer scholarship to go to LIU because I was a very talented and gifted athlete, but I fell in love with music. And because our journey started off in Windsor, when we didn't see anyone readily to speak to them about getting a record deal, our pursuit was, we're going to get a record deal. And people kept saying, you know, we're the insurance capital of the world. No one gets a record deal here. That was such a myth because we weren't sharing enough information. Last May, I created something at the Connecticut Historical Society highlighting all of the recording artists, music producers, songwriters, executives, and creative artists that came from Connecticut over the past 50 years, over 700 names. And when people came to this exhibit, they did not realize that some of our favorite artists and creatives come from Connecticut. And I'm talking about Anika Noni Rose. I'm talking about Eric LaSalle. I'm talking about Jagged Edge. I'm talking about my recording group, Room Service, and so many others. And what I realized there is we have to start putting these combinations together for young people, and it starts with art and culture. Art and culture has been a driving force in Connecticut for years, but not been out in the forefront. When we were trying to get our record deal, we kept going back and forth to New York City, to the Apollo Theater before we got discovered, 20 times before we got discovered. Every Wednesday, like clockwork, we would leave Connecticut and go to New York. One of the reasons why I'm a big fan of art and culture is during those years, I realized we didn't have the art and culture that we needed. So I started to create things I didn't see that I wanted to see. So in let me say, 1995, I got the record deal. And I realized I needed to create the Apollo Theater in Hartford. So I went from 88 Pratt Street to the Colonnade Ballroom to the Bond Ballroom to the, some of you may not remember, the Bar with No Name, just giving people a platform to perform, whether it was music, comedy, poetry, anyone who wanted to play an instrument. And I realized that I was outgrowing places, and places they weren't so readily accepting of what we were doing in terms of the culture, because I was merging hip hop and R&B. And one day I went to the Bushnell Theater, a young lady by the name of Jen Zimbrowski, and I tell her about this journey of creating something for people to perform and to actually create an environment for people to be entertained. And I didn't have a business proposal. I didn't have a business plan. I just said to her, if you just allow me to have this event here and it does well, we can continue to talk. If it doesn't do well, you'll never see me again. The event took place in the new side of the Bushnell, the Belding Theater and the Great Hall. The week that it opened up was the week that the Twin Towers fell. And they called me and said, do you want to cancel the event on Friday? And I said to them, I don't think we should. I think that as the nation is healing, our community here in Hartford and Greater Hartford needs to heal as well. And we did that event, sold out, and I realized that we had something even bigger than what was being showcased. And when people had the opportunity to set foot on that stage at the Bushnell, it turned them into a believer that art and culture is something that we needed. And when I saw people every week, every month sell out, I've been doing this for 28 years at the Bushnell. It's the longest running event of its kind at the Bushnell. And I realized when we talk about urban culture, art and culture, there weren't enough of these events happening. So what did I do? Wanted to create something I didn't see. So I went ahead and started creating the June Archer Celebration Life, raising money for AIDS and breast cancer. It was a party for a purpose. Creating the 100 Women of Color Black Tie Galen Awards, the 100 Men of Color Black Tie Galen Awards, the New England Music Seminar, all of these things to create art and culture, but having a struggle with the Bushnell to say, we don't have enough of these events where people feel welcome to come to the Bushnell. Because one thing I didn't get to mention is when I was trying to get at the Bushnell, I would reach out to people and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this event at the Bushnell. And the one thing that hurt my feelings, Anthony, was my community of folks said, you know, they don't let Black people in the Bushnell. To me, that was a problem in terms of culture. I said, then there's no better reason than to go ahead and fight for something I believe that could bring everyone together, Black, white, Hispanic, or polka dot. And I've been on that journey ever since 1995 and doing it. And that's the reason why I'm on the HSO board. It's the reason why I'm on the Greater Hartford Arts Community Board. It's the reason why I'm on the Simsbury board and the board at the Westport Library, to figure out how we build art and culture from each end of the state and every point in between. Because now more than ever, our young people are learning at a different rate. While educators are telling them to put these things away, we're telling our young people to take them out because they're already using it. They're using the technology. with the June Archer School of Arts, we're teaching kids DJing, graphic design, filmmaking, photography, animation, podcasting, and songwriting, because we have to meet them where they are, right? And when you talk about manufacturing, you talk about culture, one of the things that is coming down the pike, whether we want to accept it or not, if we're going to get excited, there are a lot of movie studios coming. There are television production companies coming to Connecticut. Our young people love art entertainment, but we can't lie to them. Everyone's not going to get a record deal. Everyone's not going to be on the basketball court, the football field. But one of the things our young people are excited about is being behind this, behind the microphone. They're learning that if you want to go out on tour with Beyonce or 50 Cent or Taylor Swift, there are hundreds of jobs in manufacturing, in makeup, in construction, in lighting, in filming, in photography, in animation, that Beyonce can't be the Beyonce that we know without all of the parts that she's not dressing herself, she's not plugging in the lights herself. And our young people are excited to know that they are a part of something bigger, right? The sum is greater than the whole of its parts. So when we introduce these jobs to young people, once again, it's bringing them the combinations to be successful. I remember having a conversation with a young man in Bridgeport, and I brought all of my platinum plaques and gold plaques to show him. And he was like, "This is cool, Mr. Archer, this is cool, but I don't see a career in music." And I said, "Well, do you like music?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What kind of music do you listen to?" He said, "Hip hop." "Who's your favorite artist?" He said, "J. Cole." I said, "Oh, I got him." I said, "So what do you want to do?" He said, "Well, I like logistics and I like technology." I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you have a passport, young man?" He said, "No." I said, "The first thing I want you to do is work on getting a passport. Secondly, I want you to know, if I told you that you could go on tour with J. Cole for 6 months and help him map out the logistics and fly all the things that go on the stage and the pyrotechnics, and you could make a 6-figure salary in less than 6 months and travel the world, would you take that job?" And his eyes got big. And he says, "I didn't know there was a job out there like that." And I said, "Absolutely." I gave him the key to success. I gave him the combinations. He connected with me, and I got him an internship at a local television station. We can't just walk the walk and talk the talk. We have to be able to give our young people these things. And I see Miss Brooks on this call from Waterbury. She was very instrumental in the June Archer School of Arts program. She allowed us to be in 6 of her boost schools to teach kids these disciplines. Why am I an advocate of this? Because I was that kid that was stuck in between, hey, we're a bathroom break between Boston and New York. No one respects what we're doing. We're known for the Hartford Whalers, and we're known for being insurance capital of the world. Well, the world has changed right now. And the one way we're going to be able to combat manufacturing and combat what our young people want to do, now more than ever, we're at a state of emergency. Our young people are going into school wanting to pursue what it is that they love. But when they get out, they're not getting the jobs that they want to do, and they're not making the money that they want to make, and they have to pay back the money that they owe. It doesn't make sense. At some point, the bottom is going to drop out. So we have to invest our resources. We have to invest our time and energy in these young people and adults who are looking for, let's be honest, some of you are at the end of your career. You're going to retire, but retirement is a state of mind. Like, what are you doing? So I challenge all of you today to say, are you doing your best, right? Are you doing your best to contribute to the art and culture and the success of our young people in the state of Connecticut and beyond? And if you are doing your best, what does your best look like? Are you going out to performances to support these artists? Are you buying artwork? Are you putting an instrument in a young child's hand? Are you trying to inspire and motivate them and give them, we have Jay-Z and Beyonce in our own communities. I tell young people, you don't have to look at Anika Noni Rose. The first African-American Disney princess came from Bloomfield, Connecticut. Eric LaSalle, Weaver graduate, executive producer of Chicago MD, PD. We have them here. We have to now begin to do exactly what Yvonne Davis is doing. to do what Wes is doing, to do what Reverend Best is doing, what Jay is doing, collectively as a state, as a community, what are we going to do to push art and culture? When we do that, I'm telling you, family and friends, we're going to see a very robust economy. We're going to see young people who are excited to get an education, but come back to Connecticut in the greater Hartford region and do some amazing things. And we're going to be surprised because I talk to them all the time. I'm in the schools. I've been blessed to be in 18 schools with the school program.
I thought I sent the updated version of with all the car key.
We got somebody who was freestyling. But seriously, I implore you all to please, if you haven't been to a June Archer event, I promise you, you are missing something, but it will inspire and motivate you because my whole purpose, and the reason why I'm so excited to be the keynote today is I love to bring people and music together because music is a soundtrack to our lives. There is a song in your midst that will allow you to remember something beautiful, sad, memorable. But when you bring people and music together, it provides a culture like none other. And Connecticut is the reason why it's called the heartbeat. And I ask that all of you continue as you're doing your work to please don't allow anyone to say that there's nothing to do in Hartford. I have some people who've been friends of mine for years. I'm 52 years old and they've never been to an event. I've been doing it for 28 years. And they say, oh man, I don't know if you're still doing it, but I haven't been able to get to it. What have you been doing for 28 years? Oh man, there's nothing to do in Connecticut. Have you been to the Wadsworth? No. Have you been to the Bushnell to see a show? No. Have you been to the Connecticut Historical Society? No. Stop saying there's nothing to do. We have the best museums. We have the best places to go and entertainment venues in the country. We have to figure out how to support these venues, support these artists, put money in these artists' pockets, because we know that it's not an easy industry, but if we support them, they will thrive, our communities will thrive, and our young people will be inspired. So I want to thank you so much for allowing me this time. I don't want to go over my time. I don't know if there's a Q&A, but I know there's an amazing panel of people I know, love, and respect coming up. So I want to say thank you so much, Jay Williams, for having me, Anthony Barrett, and those who attended. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. One last thing, with the HSO, what I'm trying to do, which is going to shift the culture, is bring R&B and hip hop with the Hartford Symphony Orchestra. It has not been done in New England the way that I envision it. And when I tell you it's going to happen, I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, or polka dot. I want to see you in that room, and we're going to make this shift. And we're going to inspire our young people who believe that they don't like symphonic music. But when you ask them if they like Marvel movies or if they went to go see Black Panther, they all get excited. And you say to them, all the movies have is symphonic music. And we need to get our young people in love with music from a different perspective and educate them from a different frequency. Thank you so much. My name is June Archer, and I appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Brother Barrett.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you. I had to do the, I don't know what I did. Did I lower my hand? I got to do some, not lower my hand. I was trying to do these. There we go. I think I did.
Appreciate you.
All right. But no, really appreciate you've been doing this. It's called Hot Chocolate Solo. I think it was my first time going to one of your events. This was poetry, a live band, and everything else. But you've been really transforming lives and creating experiences and memories for a lot of people in Connecticut. So I salute you today, and I appreciate your great work that you're doing.
I appreciate you. Paul, make sure you reach out to me. We're going to solve this problem.
All right. Laura, can you tee me up for the next slide? All right, so we have a great group of panelists coming up. First and foremost, I want to thank all the panelists for agreeing to participate in our really robust conversation around, workforce, arts, culture, legislative priorities, all those things that are really nice in driving our state forward, but then also just make sure we bring awareness to really pressing topics. First, the way we're gonna facilitate this panel discussion, each panelist will probably have about 30 seconds to kind of self-introduce themselves. But I'll do a brief, kind of quick intro of each panelist. First, Dr. Reverend Shelley Bess is the CEO for the Greater Hartford Arts Council, someone who I've seen as a visionary in the city of Hartford with the 224 and really big on in solopreneurship and really building up entrepreneurs. So very excited that she said yes to joining this panel discussion. The next is someone that's world renowned, Yvonne Renee Davis, who's an entrepreneur and also a foreign policy news analyst, who's I believe it's 2 presidents she's worked underneath and doing a lot of great work across the country, across the world actually. And then Dr. Levy Brown, who's a passionate educator, who's our provost and vice president of academic affairs at CT State and one of our colleagues that we work very closely with on our workforce issues. And then last but not least, Representative Corey Paris, who's a beacon of hope as you get a young legislator who's steadfast on making sure that we're building an equitable and inclusive workforce, prosperity for those that are just historically disenfranchised, along with serving on the education committees and a few other committees and appropriation committees. So really nice panelists, and I look forward to engaging in conversation. So before we kickstart everything else, I'll just turn it over to go down the list for Dr. Bess to introduce herself.
Good morning. I think you've done a fine introduction. I just wanted to commend June Archer for that powerful presentation. I am inspired. I want to see your list of all the celebrities of Connecticut. I am excited about the work that you've been doing and the progress that's been made. And so I am looking forward to the conversation. We at the Greater Hartford Arts Council are a catalyst for the arts, and we're committed to creating an equitable arts ecosystem. And part of that involves the creative economy and how we can help young people get on that track of the creative economy. And you can be more than the pit stop between Boston and New York. You can be a creative that ends up working in Hartford, in Boston, and New York. And I can tell you in my work with the Greater Hartford Arts Council in the course of the last couple of years, one of the greatest things I've heard is from a young creative, a young person who was like, something is happening in Hartford. I think I'm going to try to stay here instead of move away. And that's what we want. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. Yvonne?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm going to call you Brother Anthony because I've known you a long time. Proud of all the things that you and your wife are doing to make this state really progressive and innovative with the technology and the work that you do. And June, Brother June, I just text you. You know, I'm always proud of when you present and inspire. And everyone on this panel that's very gifted and talented in their own right. But the crossover is really important. There's a real integrative process that takes place in these different spaces of expertise that I'm looking at right here, from government to education to manufacturing to the nonprofit to arts and entertainment. Really very critical and important if we're going to have the proper balance and mixture, particularly when it deals with, for Black History Month, our people, or African American or Africans of the diaspora. I'm in my 28th year of business. I started my career in television. I helped launch the WTIC News at 10, April 10th, 1989. I was the first paid intern from the University of Hartford. And Mr. Lavoie, one of your colleagues, Paul Robertson, was a mentor of mine. He gave me my first shot in radio at 89.9 WQTQ. I did the news. And so the reason why I mention that is because the way that June talked about the history from whence you came and whence you start, remembering these connected relationships that you build. So in my 28 years of business, how I started in that space was more in the context of, I had the job at Fox for 5.5 years. I did producing special projects, worked the assignment desk. I really wanted to be a news reporter. But I was told by a news director, who still exists, that I was too fat and happy to be on television at the time. And so what happened was it was very hurtful because I was competing against another person who's very well known, and they chose that person. And so a mentor of mine, Pat Sheehan, I shared with him. So he asked me what I wanted to do. He advised me, if you want to be in that space, be in that space. So I went on to grad school, got a lot of education, and then suddenly opportunities started to come my way. In terms of my first and second master's degrees, I had an opportunity to work as a community relations director. And then when that failed after Fox, I wanted to get a PR job. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't know enough, but I knew enough because I served my community for free, writing press releases, getting press coverages, covering the protest, everything that was going on. And then what happened after that, I said I could do this on my own, and I never looked back. And the opportunity to go global happened when a then governor of Texas offered me an opportunity to come on board. And then after he was elected, other opportunities opened that allowed me to promote public diplomacy and train throughout the world, 64 countries later, under 3 US presidents. I did the third one that he's controversial, virtually, in terms of during COVID. And so I talk about those things because in the process, I was able to combine those skills, come back to TV as a foreign policy news analyst, and be able to talk in media spaces in Japan, in Russia. Now you can't go to Russia, but you can, but you know the situation, and make historical marks in Israel and the Palestinian sides. And I've worked in danger zones, been in bombing, shootings, all kinds of things, but able to talk about things firsthand, working in Ukraine, working in places that as a woman of color, a Black woman, and the opportunity to give back to our young people, that the world is global and it can start right here in Hartford, Connecticut. And I'm not originally from Hartford, but I've been here a long time. And that you can go to Paris for the chocolate festival. You can also cover the BET Awards with my digital platform that I co-own and launch. And I only say that because all of us are connected here in this space, and there's an integrative process that we can start to see how we can enhance our young people this way. And in being almost 60 years old, being relevant becomes important. So it forced me to have to be more innovative in terms of technology and AI and digital and streaming, and just learning, re-educating myself in a space where it used to be very traditional and it's not anymore. And so I'm proud to be with everyone here today.
All right, thank you, Yvonne. Dr. Levy?
All right, good morning, everyone. Glad to be a part of the conversation today. Levy Brown, Provost for CT State, and looking forward to the conversation ahead today. I have an opportunity to shape academic affairs, student affairs work, and workforce innovation. I have been in higher education for a little over 2 decades at this point, served as an instructor, served currently as an administrator, advising, but also the DEI space has been incredibly important, even before the terminology became popular, so to speak. And so committed to the work, looking forward to conversations. Again, glad to be here.
Thank you. And Rep. Paris?
Anthony, June, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everybody. I know that we're saying a lot of, we've been saying that Hartford has a lot to do, but I just think Connecticut has a lot to do. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that you don't have to be born and raised in Connecticut to love it. You can choose Connecticut. And I'm really proud to have chosen Connecticut, but I want it to be a place where even after you're born and raised here, or you come here to choose it, that opportunity and the importance and quality of life is there for everybody. So I'm really happy to be here in solidarity and in community with y'all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And let's just dive right in just for the sake of time. So the first question, I'm going to pose it to Dr. Bess. How do you believe that the arts can be a powerful tool for social change, particularly in the context of celebrating and preserving Black heritage and addressing racial injustices?
Well, that's a lot to unpack, but I am going to make an attempt. When we consider our context, for us here in the greater Hartford area in particular, we know that Hartford itself is a place where there's a significant population of people of color in this community. And yet we also know that in a place like Hartford, there is a high rate of profound poverty. And so we have to take a look at what's going on in our community. What are we cultivating here? And when we think about the younger people that are entering the workforce in a place like Hartford, Connecticut, with such a high rate of poverty, which with a high rate of dropout, with a very low rate of people having even bachelor's degrees in a community, it does not mean we lack. It means that we are lacking the cultivation of people that could be on the track of success. And what I mean by that is when we look at the arts, when we look at creativity, the opportunity to be the singer, the dancer, the healer of community, to be the storyteller, the visual artist, to be the carpenter, to be the electrician, to be somebody committed to the arts, working in the arts ecosystem, is where many people find their passion and their purpose. To be a creative is a wonderful livelihood. And yet for many people who happen to be people of color, African American in particular, it's very hard to have the support of your family to say, yes, you should take the creative path. And I'm sure June Archer knows something about that. He's got a solid citizen mother who wanted to be sure he had livelihood. And so when we look at this great opportunity in a place like Hartford in the state of Connecticut, we have a grand opportunity to cultivate a whole new generation of creatives. And to be a creative doesn't mean you necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate for success. To be a creative, what it means is to tap into your passion and to have livelihood where you're earning a living based on the thing that sets you up in the morning to want to get up and go forward. And so if we want to have more people in our community committed to their passion and their purpose, then we've got to open that up in the school system so people can be prepared to be creatives along the way. When we look at the high rate of education and creativity being cut, it's a flaw in our society. We know that everyone's talking about the importance of STEM education, science and technology, etc., but we want to add arts to it. The STEAM aspect is important. And yet we know that in many of our schools, there is no band, there is no chorus, there is no dance. All of these things have been cut. There's no visual arts. And if you don't begin with your creative practice as a young person, it's very hard to catch up later in life. And so one thing that I hope each of us embrace is the importance to be advocates for our education so we can really start to infuse the creative economy and give people opportunities to be in the creative workforce. So when we think about African American people and creativity, somebody once said that, what is it? Something like struggle is the mother of invention. And so when you think about creativity, African American people have brought it ever since we got here. We have brought creativity. We have created new art forms. We are the inventors of art forms that didn't even exist, and it came out of our struggle. Because of that high struggle, we created some of the most phenomenal art forms in the world. Jazz is an invention of Black folks, and it comes out of our struggle. The blues, an invention of Black folks coming out of our struggle. Gospel music and the power that comes forth from gospel came out of our struggle. The power of our visual arts, the power of our storytelling, the craziness of our comedy, all of this comes out of our culture, and we don't want to snuff it. We want to raise it up. And so part of the work of the Greater Hartford Arts Council now is to really look at not just investing in art for art's sake and the same old arts that have always been done. We are committed to investing in transformative arts as what I call creative disruption or creative disruptors. In other words, we're investing in art that changes the landscape, changes the community, changes the culture. We're consciously investing in art that will make social change. So when you look at the work that we've been doing at the Greater Hartford Arts Council, we've had some pilot programs that we've launched and we see results. For example, one of them is called Street Stages, where we invest in individual artists, get them gigs in the community, and help to build up the economy of especially small businesses. You know it makes a difference when Capital Ice Cream suddenly has a jazz combo out front. Suddenly people decide, I want ice cream today. That increases sales, that increases business. It puts feet on the street. It makes a difference for the whole economy. And then for a bigger picture of creative disruption, I think in Hartford, Connecticut, one of the greatest creative disruptions is the Greater Hartford Festival of Jazz. Last year, and generally, over 175,000 people show up in Hartford, Connecticut. Now think about that through an economic development lens. You suddenly have 175,000 more guests in your house than anticipated, state of Connecticut and Hartford. So if you're going to have 175,000 more guests, what do you do to prepare your home? Thus, we should start to look at arts as a vehicle for creative disruption and for economic development. We ought to be investing along with the arts because it's a grand opportunity for our state to grow and to thrive. And so when you think about African American people, we have been bringing it ever since we came here. We are creators, we are creative, and we just need the opportunity to continue that legacy. And I believe it's very important for us to invest in the next generation, to open up the opportunities, to connect them to arts organizations, to open up doors that historically have been closed, and to let people of color, especially African American people in this state of Connecticut, know that the state and the arts belong to everyone. It belongs to everyone. There is no place you are not allowed to go. There is no door you're not allowed to walk in. There is no art form you are not allowed to partake in, because art is supposed to be the story of each and every one of us. So that's my response.
All right, thank you. That's thank you. That was a robust response, and I really appreciate it. You bringing us full circle. So I'd like to turn the next question over to Rep. Paris. What are the most critical areas of policy reform to ensure equity in education and economic opportunities for Black community? And how can educators support these reforms outside of the classroom?
That's a great question. And I think that the most important reforms that we can talk about right now is any investment that we make in early childhood education, and equally so in our higher education system, but also in building the bridge and also filling the gap of what might be needed for the trades programs as well, because not everyone is equipped or should go to college. I think everyone should have the options and opportunities to do whatever aligns best with their passions and their creativity. So, I mean, we're spending about $12.5 billion as of 2 years ago on K-12 education. And as important as that is, that's $12.5 billion on 10% of the brain. And we're spending less than $500 million on 90% of the brain development. And that 90% of that brain development is very important for students of color, especially for young Black students. And if we're able to enable more working mothers and working fathers in the Black community to go to work while we're making sure that their kids are prepared for the K-12 system, we will see the disparities in education begin to shrink in terms of our kids being able to compete as much as they possibly can in the school space against their white counterparts, or with their white counterparts rather. And what that does is it simply sets us up for a better continuum of education in the future. And why is that important? It's important because that obviously dismantles the institutions that are set up to, one, keep our kids out of certain spaces and areas, but two, it sets our economy up to be stronger. It sets our quality of life up to be stronger in Connecticut. It sets up an opportunity for women, especially Black women, to be able to succeed. Black women are still making less than their white counterparts or counterparts of other races. However, it's the highest growing and fastest growing amount of college graduates in the country, outpacing men of any race, outpacing other women of any race, and yet they still cannot dismantle the pay parity that they need. And in this state, Quite frankly, we have a brain drain. And if you think about that, it makes no sense since Connecticut is one of the highly educated states in the country. More people here have college degrees, arguably, than most other states in the country. Yet there's a brain drain of young people in our state and young people of color leaving at alarming rates or not pursuing careers here in Connecticut at alarming rates. And so that cuts us off from entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation. And we've got to be able to provide our young people with the opportunity to have a stellar university system for them to call their own. Now, Yale and Sacred Heart and Quinnipiac and UConn, they're all great schools. But let's be real about where most of our kids are going to school when they go to college. They're going to the CSCUs. They're going to the community colleges through a PACT program, or they're going to any of the 4 statewide institutions. And what's happening right now at those institutions, because we're not funding them at the levels in which they should be funded, the problem is that we've got cafeterias that are closing down, so that increases food insecurity. We've got library hours which are being cut, so that keeps our students from being able to use the resources in order to help propel them in their academic career. We've got career service programs that are being eliminated from the college campuses. And if our young people don't know how to start a cover letter or prepare a resume, we're already setting them up for failure. So Connecticut needs to do better in terms of the continuum and making those investments on the front end and on the back end to ensure that our workforce works for everybody. Because when Black and brown folks are doing better, everybody else is going to succeed as well.
All right, no, thank you. And then this next question, I'm going to transition it to Dr. Levy Brown, who's sits in our workforce cabinet. How important is it to reform educational policies to ensure more inclusive and accurate representation of Black history and contributions, and what role can legislators play in this process? I know several years back in the K-12, the Black History Bill, I forgot what the exact name of the bill was, that was rolled out with, I believe, even yourself, Mr. Paris, and also Representative Bobby Gibson and a few other ones, rolled it out. But I haven't seen it really rolled out the way I think that it should be. But even from the higher ed perspective, Dr. Brown, I'd love to hear your perspective on how can we incorporate more of that into the education perspective, understanding that a large part of our populations that are served are going to those community colleges and our state universities.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Again, let me first commend the group of panelists and our keynote and the organizers. This is robust conversation, and I'm just learning so much about the great talent in Connecticut. As it relates to policy reform, that's where you have to start, right? I mean, whether it is K-12, higher education, or any other space that we're trying to make a significant difference and shift outcomes for minoritized individuals, especially Black people in the state and across the country, especially when you have some states, right? I mean, let's just call a thing. You have some states that are being very intentional about moving away from anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, accessibility, justice, however we want to frame it. And so I will say that I am very much so thankful to be a part of a place that really is starting to even more embrace the work through a DEI lens and making changes as needed. I'll speak from a college perspective. Anytime we want to start to shift outcomes related to curriculum or student success rates, when we may see that there may be equity gaps between how our students are performing and the way that we really want to see them experience student success, we start with policies, right? We start with the policies and what we call a policy audit. And I think that can be applicable, whether that is in higher education, private industry, nonprofit work. How do the policies and the reform that we're looking to bring, how will it change the outcomes moving forward? I do think that anyone who has the authority, the ability, the desire to help shape policy to benefit the education space should, and that's not only at the college level or the higher education level. That's also within the realm of legislature and policy makers, right? Just making sure that we understand the intended outcomes and implications as we move forward. Because the reality is as well, and this is what we used to say in my previous place in higher education, is that we have to understand that policies have implications and they can really help people, people of color, specifically Black folks, or they can hurt people. And so we're called to serve and uplift. And so policies and the way that we shape them, the way that we not only write them, but the implementation plan as well, that makes a difference for how we can move things forward. So that's just a little bit of insight and perspective as relates to educational policy and potential reform.
Thank you. I know we're almost close to time, so I'd like to transition to a general question. I'll pose the first one to Yvonne. Looking to the future, what message of hope or guidance would you offer to young Black individuals aspiring to succeed in your respective fields, and how can society at large support their ambitions?
I think the responsibility to people in my generation, Gen X, maybe Y, and even our elder generation, is to be an example of what it is to be focused and disciplined in your career, and be willing to pass the baton. Oftentimes we don't want to give up who we are when we've established ourselves. So we have to be willing to invest our time, treasure, and talent in young people. I mentor a lot of young men and women of all ages, and I invest in them with my time, treasure, and talent, and I give them opportunities to succeed. And I will say this controversially, opportunities to fail, because in the failure is the learning. So that becomes important. In the space of women of color in particular, we need to be more inclusive and opening and embracing of one another in our good and in our bad times, and be examples and reach out and find. I mentor a young lady right now out of the New Haven area, and she's a mother of 3 children with special needs. And so she goes to Southern. And so, although it's not my career, what she's going into, it is still my responsibility to see that she's on the right path towards success. And in terms of the overarching community, what needs to take place in order for us to have a future that's positive is that we have to focus a lot on healing. There's a lot of trauma that still exists inside our community that we still have to address. Success, you can dress up success, but if internally we're not prepared, it becomes fleeting. So that opportunity has to come with our still addressing the pain points that exist in our communities, and that we don't run away from the reality that we still have that we have work to do. It's not being negative, it's just being on point with what the work is. And the work requires us to come together and say, why are we apart? What examples can we take, like what you're doing, Anthony, to bring different people to the table, reaching out to see what that's going to take place. And in terms of my career, if people want to follow in my space of the media side, communication strategy, or even in the international space that I do, I think that the first thing I say is, I love what Jude gave the example of the passport. I really start to have people look at things on a global context, not just so much that how it just relates to what's happening in their backyard, because we're seeing across the nation now, the global is now the local. People are engaged. And so creating a curiosity about, I grew up poor in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was a 4-year-old when I said, I want to fly planes. I want to be on planes, go around the world and meet presidents. And I did that. I said that to my dad at 4 years old. And so with that, it's just how do you imbue in them the spirit of wanting to go beyond their norms, because some of our kids have not even gone out of Hartford, Connecticut. They're just there or just out of the state. So being that example and speaking life into them, paying attention, listening to their language, and also coming to where they're at. We got to know their music. We got to understand their culture. We got to see where they're at. We can't say, oh, I don't like that. And then we got to patiently patiently course correct them in a way that allows them to come and realize what they need to do, as opposed to us telling, because young people today, that you can't just tell them what to do. You got to inspire them in a different type of way.
Thank you. And yeah, for anyone else on the panel that would like to answer that question, I can rephrase it again. But we may just want to make sure I have enough time for the final speaker, Ms. Denise Austin, who's a financial advisor, to be able to at least give her presentation. So if anyone else want to take a quick stab before we transition, answering that question, let's just remember to be short and brief.
I'll jump in. One of the pieces of advice that I tend to share is something that I heard from my father when I was growing up. I grew up in Norfolk, Connecticut, the northwest corner, the icebox of Connecticut. And yes, I got out of Norfolk and made it all the way to Hartford. And that was a big trip, because to grow up in a place like Connecticut is to think you can't go places, especially as a Black woman there. I was raised to believe there were places I couldn't go. No need to apply. You can't do it. That's not a place for you. My father said to me, take steps and go anywhere you want to go and just stick with it. Don't quit. And then if they don't let you in, make a place for yourself. And so I've always been passionate about art and public art. And quite frankly, I was serving the Conference of Churches for 20 years. We created the 224 Eco Space probably about 10 years ago. We created an art organization and an art incubator. I didn't even realize I was becoming an art administrator. I was following the desire of my heart. We created a place where Black and brown people could come and create their art and develop their art businesses, because quite frankly, I wasn't welcomed in a lot of the other spaces, even 10 years ago. And I have to say out loud, I am so grateful for the support that we've received from the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving and Jay Williams, because he was one of those coaches who said, you can do it. Because we just had our shoulders to the plow doing the work, not even realizing what we were doing. And he was one of those advocates that stood along with us and said, yes, you can. And so some of us need to stand with others and say, yes, you can. You can do this. You can make a difference. You can make progress. Let me connect you to somebody else so you can make your dream happen. And so that's the nugget I want to leave. If there's a passion that somebody has in their heart, you know, we're in Connecticut. It isn't even 6 degrees of separation. You can get to just about anybody you need to, and anyone with wisdom is usually willing to help somebody else out. So just know that there are others who will be glad to share wisdom with you if you want to grow in any career venture.
All right, thank you. And get ready to transition, but I'd like to also just leave a remarks too. I know Yvonne had mentioned something about failure, and what I always work with young people, always, even adults too, always stress the importance of failure as well. You know, fail early, fail often, and fail forward, because those are the true lessons in what you learn. Next, I'd like to, first, before I transition, thank everyone. I appreciate all the panelists for a really just robust conversation. Thank you for accepting the call. I know I had to kind of chase a few people down, but I really appreciate everyone just really coming and making sure we can really acknowledge all this wonderful contribution and all this talent in our state. We're a very talented state, and I really truly appreciate everyone for taking their time out of their busy day to be here. Next, I'd like to introduce Shanice Austin. She's a retired educator. She worked for 3+ years at Connecticut College and then retired from UConn School of Business. UConn School of Business as your diversity officer. And now she's transitioning her secondary career as a financial advisor to close us out with a financial presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Anthony, for having me here today. I just really enjoyed the spirited conversations that we had today. And I would like to wrap it up because I think it's so important as we think about jobs and the arts and what we're creating here in the state of Connecticut, that we're also thinking through the building blocks of creating financial security for our young people within the state. I'm going to forego doing the presentation and just really have a conversation with everyone. One of the key things that I wanted to share is jobs and income alone isn't enough, right? We have to start having conversations with young people about how and where they're placing their money for the long term, right? How are they building wealth for themselves and for their family? Because what we're talking about today is how people are living their lives today. What I do in my career is helping people plan for their future, and not just theirs, but their children's future and their children's children. Those are the types of conversations that I think is important as community leaders and as legislators that we're thinking about. Connecticut was mentioned earlier, was finance and insurance was the #1 sector. So we have the resources, we have the tools, we have the experts, right? We need to start creating statewide initiatives for young people, as well as those that are working now in the state, to help them plan for their financial future. One of the things that I've been doing, I'm from New London. I live in New London, Connecticut. I'm originally from New York, and like many folks, chose Connecticut. My mother actually chose Connecticut for our family, and I've been here for 40+ years. One of the things that I'm working on locally in New London is connecting with our city councilors, and we have a youth summer employment program, right? And part of what we're doing in New London is talking with young people about where they can place their money and start planning and investing for their future. And then implementing that as a standard as a part of the summer youth program. That's an initiative that can be accomplished across the state, right? So it's not just providing young people with jobs, but providing young people with the knowledge and the space around financial security and planning for their future. We have a wealth gap in this country, right? And I think part of our role is to find ways to alleviate that. We talked earlier today about the income gap, but I think, we missed the conversation about the wealth gap. Right now in this country, there is the largest wealth transfer that's going on in history. And many people that look like us, we've been talking a lot about Black and brown people, are not participating in that wealth transfer. What is going to happen 20, 30, 40 years from now? How are we going to be a part of that? And the things that we do today, the things that we do now as a state and as a community is going to inform what the future is going to look like for those yet to come. So I know that we are hitting on 11 o'clock, Anthony. I don't want to go over time, but just wanted to share those few words and really invite folks to connect with me and talk about some of the things that I'm doing within my business, as well as what we're doing here locally in New London.
All right, thank you, Denise. And she had a robust presentation on really how to build, financial prosperity, not just for young people, but for adults and everything else. So if anyone's very interested in her presentation, we should be able to have that to be able to offer, or you can always contact, Shanice as well to learn some different strategies on building prosperity. But that is one of the ways that we have to build up our communities, do economic development, economic prosperity, and wealth building, and teaching entrepreneurship. So it's an overall ecosystem and how we put people in a position to be empowered versus just giving something. So very big on empowerment and relationship building and building that social capital. So with that said, I appreciate everyone for coming out, and thank you. And I'll turn it over to Jay if he wants to say some closing remarks.
Oh, just thank you all for your participation, to our speakers, presenters, and panelists. And again, to you, Anthony. Everybody stay well.
Thank you all.